I built my real estate portfolio over 30 years, one property at a time. I did the research myself. I negotiated the terms. I arranged the financing. By the time my son turned 18, I owned a 40-property portfolio worth $8 million. Not inherited. Built. My son got married 4 years ago. Claire seemed perfect. She was attentive. She remembered my preferences. She volunteered to help with my business affairs. I was grateful. I'd been managing everything alone for so long. Last month, I got a letter, an automated notification from my property management company. Someone had accessed my account using new login credentials. I didn't recognize the email address. I opened my laptop. My hands were shaking, though I don't remember deciding to be scared. I think my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. The account was not new. It had been accessed 17 times over the past 6 weeks. Someone had downloaded copies of all my property deeds, all my corporate documentation, all my tenant records, every lease agreement, every mortgage document, every insurance policy, every appraisal from the past decade. Then I checked my emails, the ones forwarded to an address I didn't recognize, the property management company's messages, the insurance company's updates, the tax assessor's notices. 6 weeks of my financial life, redirected to an email address registered to a Gmail account under a name I'd never heard. There was a draft. Unsigned, but a draft. A preliminary filing to transfer the titles of my 12 most valuable properties into my son's name, with Claire listed as co-signer on every single transaction. The filing was dated 4 days ago. The values were listed correctly, down to the appraisal amounts. She'd done her research. I sat there for a very long time. I didn't move. I didn't call anyone. I just read the same document over and over, waiting for the letters to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Waiting for it to become something less than what it was. The filing detailed the 12 most valuable properties, not all 40, strategically chosen, the ones worth the most, the ones that would give her the most leverage if my son ever filed for divorce, because that's what this was really about. This wasn't about protecting my son's inheritance. This was about positioning herself to own half of $8 million the moment his marriage fell apart. I printed it, 23 pages. I printed every email from the accounts she'd accessed. I printed the logs showing her IP address, her login times, the documents she'd downloaded, the changes she'd made. I printed a timeline showing each access, each download, the pattern of her careful work. I cross-referenced the dates with my own records. Monday the 15th at 3:47 p.m., she accessed the property management account while my son was at work. Wednesday the 17th at 2:15 a.m., she downloaded the deed copies. Friday the 19th, she filed the preliminary transfer paperwork. I sat at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning, the printer humming, the pages stacking up. I organized them chronologically. I highlighted the key dates. I cross-referenced them with my calendar, my own digital records, the moments when I was at home and she was sitting in my office, supposedly helping me organize some files. I had left her alone. I had trusted her alone in the room where I kept my most valuable documents. I understood as I printed and organized and highlighted that my daughter-in-law had been stealing from me methodically and deliberately for 6 weeks, and I had nearly let it happen. Another week, and those transfers would have been complete. Another 2 weeks, and she would have owned half my portfolio. The first time you discover betrayal, you don't believe it. You think maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you opened the wrong file. Maybe there's an explanation that makes this something other than what it is. But the second time you check, you understand. They hadn't finished yet. The filings were still in draft. The notary hadn't signed. The attorney hadn't reviewed them. I had time. I called my attorney the next morning. David had been representing me for 23 years. He didn't ask questions. He just listened while I explained what I'd found, and then he said, "Bring everything you have. Come in at 9. I printed every email, every property record, every account access log, every draft filing. I printed the timeline. I organized it chronologically. I put it all in a folder, alphabetized and dated. I did what I'd done 1,000 times before. I documented. I presented evidence. I let the facts speak. Here's what you need to know about Claire. She positioned herself very carefully. It took me a long time to see it because I wasn't looking. Why would I look? She was my daughter-in-law. She married my son. She called me on my birthday. 2 weeks after they got married, she suggested I let her help with my business paperwork. She said, "Margaret, you work so hard. You should let someone else handle the administrative stuff. You have property managers for the properties, but who's managing you?" She smiled when she said it, like she was concerned, like she wanted to take something difficult off my plate. It was a good point. It sounded like care. It sounded like she wanted to lighten my load, to be helpful, to be the kind of daughter-in-law who stepped in and made things easier. I declined, politely. I said I liked managing my own affairs. I said the work kept me sharp. I said I enjoyed it. She didn't push it. She just let it sit there. The idea that I was overworked, that I needed help, that it was generous of her to offer. Over the next 3 years, she came back to it. Not aggressively, just casually. She would mention it in passing. "How are you managing with all the properties? That must be exhausting." Or, "Your son mentioned you're still doing all your own accounting. You should really delegate that." Or, my favorite, "It's amazing you can keep up with everything at your age. Most women wouldn't even try." The "at your age" part was important. She said it with a smile. She said it like she was impressed, like she was acknowledging how remarkable it was that I could still manage a complex portfolio when so many women my age had given up. It was the kindest possible version of "you're getting old." Then, about 6 months ago, she started talking to my son differently. I didn't hear it directly, but he mentioned it. He said, "Mom, Claire thinks you might be getting a little scattered. She said you forgot to pay a property manager last month." I had not forgotten. I had paid that property manager on time, as I always do. I have automatic payments. I have a system that works. I have been doing this successfully for 30 years. But there it was. The seed. Your mother is getting forgetful. Your mother can't keep track anymore. Your mother is losing her grip on things. Your mother might not even know what she's losing. She had no idea that I could read, that I could click, that I could access every account I'd ever created, that I had been managing these properties longer than she'd been alive. She thought she was patient. 6 weeks of careful access, 6 weeks of copying documents. She thought that by the time my son even knew about the transfer, the paperwork would be done and the transfers would be automatic. She thought he would look at what she'd accomplished and see the genius in it, the gift of it. What she didn't account for was that I check my accounts every week, that I read every notification the moment it comes in, that I had been building this portfolio when she was still in high school, that I would notice when someone accessed it without permission. 3 days after I found the draft filings, I called my son.
"Hi, Mom. Everything okay?"
"I need you to meet with my attorney. Tuesday at 2. Bring your calendar."
"Is something wrong?"
"I'll explain on Tuesday." I did not tell him what I'd found. I wanted him to walk in without a narrative. I wanted him to see the evidence first. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't accusing his wife based on suspicion or emotion. I was presenting him with documents. My attorney, David, had been representing me for 23 years. He'd helped me structure my first property deals. He'd guided me through every major transaction. He knew the difference between Margaret with a plan and Margaret in crisis. I had called him as soon as I got off the phone with my son, and I could hear something shift in his voice when I told him what I'd found.
"This is fraud. Email-based account access without your authorization. Attempted transfer of titled assets without your consent. Falsification of preliminary filings. Every piece of this is fraud."
"What do I do?"
We show your son. Today, in this office, with me present. You don't accuse anyone. You show him the documentation. And then we call the authorities.
My son arrived at 1:55 on a Tuesday. He looked confused. He'd brought a folder. He thought maybe his mother was updating her will. Maybe we were discussing the trust structure. Maybe this was about estate planning. David had the evidence laid out on the table. 17 account access logs. All from the same email address. All dated. All from Claire's phone, tracked by IP address and user agent, and every other digital footprint she'd left behind. 12 property deeds, 12 draft transfer filings, each one showing the property value, the proposed new owner, my son, and Claire listed as co-signer. The specificity was surgical. She wasn't sloppy. She was methodical. All unsigned. All waiting. My son looked at the first page. He didn't say anything. He looked at the second page. His face changed, the color drained out, and I watched him understand in real time what his wife had been doing. By the fourth page, he was reading them all at once, flipping through like he was trying to convince himself that what he was seeing wasn't real. Like if he'd just looked at them from a different angle, they might transform into something innocent.
Is this saying Claire was...
Filing to transfer your mother's properties into your name, with her as co-signer on all the accounts. Yes.
That's not possible. Claire wouldn't...
I found the draft filings myself. I called my attorney. He verified everything you're looking at.
I don't understand. Why would she do this?
Because once the transfer's completed, the properties would be in your name. You would be the legal owner. She would be the co-signer. If you and she ever divorced, she could claim community property rights. She would own half of my $8 million portfolio. Not from her work, not from anything she built, from a legal document she forged while you were at work, and I thought she was being helpful. She'd already planned for the divorce, you see. She'd already decided that this marriage was temporary, that you would eventually leave her, or she would leave you, and when that happened, she would own half of everything I spent 30 years building. She positioned herself as co-signer on property deeds that belonged entirely to me, so that when the marriage fell apart, she could walk away with $4 million. That's what this was about. Not love, not family, mathematics.
But I didn't know about this. I would never...
I know.
How long has she been doing this?
The account access logs show 6 weeks from first access to the most recent activity, which was 2 days ago. This is systematic. This is intentional. This is not a mistake.
I need to call her. I need to ask her what's going on. There has to be an explanation. Maybe she was trying to help and didn't understand how it would look, or maybe...
No.
What?
David, what do we need to do right now?
Call the State Attorney General's office. File a fraud complaint. They'll open an investigation. This evening, your son needs to leave the house. Tonight, he does not confront Claire. He does not tell her he knows. He goes to a hotel. He calls a divorce attorney tomorrow morning. We let the authorities handle the rest. The room was very quiet. My son looked at the folders of evidence in front of him. He looked at me. He looked at David. He understood, finally, what his wife had been doing in the quiet hours when she thought nobody was watching. 6 weeks of deliberate, methodical theft. Not in anger. Not in desperation. With planning.
You're going to do that, aren't you? My son nodded. He was very pale. I had already called a real estate attorney, a corporate attorney, and a family law specialist. They were waiting for my call. My son met with all 3 of them that evening. Each one told him the same thing. Leave tonight. Don't confront her. Let the law handle this. By Wednesday morning, the preliminary transfer filings had been officially rejected by the county clerk's office. David had submitted a formal complaint to the state. The fraud investigation was open. The police had been notified. The bank had been alerted. Every financial institution I worked with had been told to monitor for suspicious activity. Claire had gone to work that morning, not knowing that her entire plan had unraveled in 24 hours. She had no idea that while she was at her job, feeling secure in the timeline she'd created, my attorney was filing charges with the state. She had no idea that my son had left the house. She had no idea that her bank accounts had been flagged, that her IP address was flagged, that every action she'd taken in the previous 6 weeks was being documented and preserved as evidence. My son filed for divorce that afternoon. He worked with his attorney to prepare the paperwork, to document his lack of knowledge of Claire's actions, to protect himself from being implicated in what his wife had been doing. By Friday, she'd been arrested. She left for work that Thursday morning, and the police were waiting at her office. Claire's face when she realized what had happened. I only know about it through my son's account. He came to get his things that Wednesday, while she was at work. He left a letter. He did not see her face. He did not hear what she said when she came home to an empty house and a letter from a divorce attorney and, by evening, the police at her door. I don't need to see someone's face to know when they've lost. Here's what happened next. My son's attorney advised him to cooperate fully with the fraud investigation. He did. The state pressed charges. Claire went to trial. The hearing was 3 months later. The case was clear. The emails, the account access logs, the draft filings, the IP addresses, the digital timestamps proving intent and deliberation. There was no ambiguity, no room for misunderstanding. Claire was convicted of financial fraud. She was sentenced to 18 months in minimum security prison. More importantly, she was permanently barred from ever holding a real estate license or fiduciary position in this state. She will never be able to do what she tried to do to me ever again. The property titles were secured. Every single one remained in my name. The draft filings were voided. The unauthorized account access was documented and prosecuted. My portfolio survived intact. I rewrote my will that same month. I left nothing to my son. Not his inheritance. Not his future. Nothing. Not because I didn't love him, but because I learned something in those weeks. I learned that the people we trust can be blinded by someone who offers them a simple story. I learned that my life's work, 30 years of research and negotiation and risk and planning, could be stolen by someone who smiled at my dinner table and remembered my birthday and called me sweetheart. I learned that trust was a luxury I could no longer afford to give the way I had. Not to him. Not when he'd proven, however unintentionally, that he could be manipulated into destroying his mother for the sake of a woman who didn't love him. I left everything to my grandchildren, every property, every account, every piece of the $8 million. Not to my son, but to his children. They will inherit a legacy he doesn't get to control. They will have what I built, and he will never again be the person who decides what happens to it. I set up a trust that my son cannot touch, cannot borrow against, cannot sell, cannot access. The properties will go to his children when they turn 35. If they want to sell them then, that's their choice. If they want to keep them, if they want to build on what I've built, that's also their choice. But he doesn't get to make that decision. He never again gets to be the person who decides what happens to my life's work. This isn't punishment. This is protection. This is me, at 58 years old, still managing what I built, still choosing, still in control, still making the decisions that matter. I still speak to my son. We have dinner sometimes. He comes to the house. We talk about the weather. We talk about his career. We talk about my properties. But something changed after that day in David's office. He learned that his wife was trying to steal from me. He learned he'd almost been part of it, even though he didn't know. He learned that his mother, the woman he thought was getting forgetful, getting old, losing her grip, had been watching every account, reading every email, and catching the theft before it was complete. He looks at me differently now, with something like respect, but also with the knowledge that I am not someone to be managed, not someone to be helped, not someone to be decided for. I am someone who documents, who acts, who protects what's hers. I sometimes wonder if Claire thought I wouldn't notice. If she thought that at 58 years old, still managing a 40-property portfolio on my own, I would somehow miss the moment someone decided to take it. If she thought I was too old or too distracted, or too trusting to catch what she was doing. She didn't account for this. I didn't build an $8 million portfolio by being careless. I didn't keep it by being naive, and I didn't protect it by being silent. I noticed, I documented, I acted, and she lost everything she was reaching for. I kept mine. I'm keeping it still.